Well, happy Friday, Facebook world. I hope you guys are having a fabulous day. I wanted to talk to you about self care, and I thought, why not come to you and tell you about my story and how I made self care become my number one priority and why. So, my story how did I get into being a life coach for women around self care? Well, the reason why I did this is because it started with my own journey. So, let's talk about that. I came from a background of being in law for 40 years. Yep, I'm dating myself, I know. But I came from a background of 40 years in law, and I recognized that it was something that I loved doing in the very beginning. When you're young, you're like guns blazing, you're ready to go after what you want, you dive into your career. In fact, my career didn't really start off the way it typically would have in the past. Like most people go to college, they get a degree, and then they go out into the world. At least most people that I knew did that. And they go out into the world and they get their career of choice based on what they did in college. For me, it was opposite. My background, I came from a generation that before that said, go to school, get your diploma, go to work. So that's what I did. So out into the workforce, I went at 18 years old after graduating from high school. And I didn't quite go and hit the mark what I wanted to do, which was to be a legal assistant right away, because my mom had a friend who was already doing that, who talked me out of actually going to school and getting a degree in that because she said, you don't want to do that. So I took her at her word because, well, she's been doing it for so long, right? So I ended up going out into the workforce doing something completely different. I worked for a company that sold, ceiling tiles, the kind that go into the roof of office, suites and that. So I ended up doing that for a few months, and of course I left for reasons that I don't really need to go into. But I ended up working as a switchboard operator at this office space where there was about 12 different units on this third floor, and I was at the switchboard. And I happened to notice that there was a lawyer's office his phone was the busiest. So I thought to myself, well, why don't I go and check this out? Because why, this is something that I wanted to do, and I was talked out of it, but I thought, this guy looks really busy and it sounds like something I might be interested in. So I walked down to this real estate attorney's office and I asked him, I said, hey, I see that your phone is ringing the most on this floor. Are you looking for anyone? Are you looking for help? And he said, yes. And that was how I started in my career of law, working as a legal assistant, right off the switchboard operator floor, if you will, right into the real estate law. And it was exhilarating at first, because it's exciting. It was doing something different, something I hadn't done before. And so I went into it with an open mind, an open heart, and I said, okay, I'm going to learn something here. So over the years, I started going from different places, and I got married, and my husband and I, we decided to not just live in one place where it's always cold in certain times of the year. We decided, let's live our lives now. We don't have to retire and then go to the places that people talk about when they retire. Let's do it while we're young. So we did that. We started moving around, and we've been to different places. I've lived in 3 provinces in Canada. I've traveled across Canada. I've lived in 3 states in the US, and I've traveled right across the states. And we also lived in Mexico 2 years in a row. We had done that twice for 5.5 months, 2 times. So where am I going with this? Well, what ended up happening was I was working really hard. We were living in California at the time, and I was working really hard, really long hours, and I started to feel the burnout, stressed. And that's something about with women that we typically, especially when you're in business, you're push, 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 go, go, go. That's how I was. And I didn't stop myself from pushing through. I didn't recognize that taking breaks is really important because it helps you to calm your nervous system and change brain states. But I didn't know that. I just was, I know this has to get done. I'm under the time crunch, and I just have to push through. But my health was starting to take a turn for the worse because of it. I was starting to feel stressed all the time, sleepless nights. and things like that. And I felt off, even though I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong. So what did I do? Well, this is what happened. Back in March of 2018, my husband and I, we decided we're going to move from California to Las Vegas. So we ended up getting a place to live in Las Vegas. And this is like really fast. We made the decision quickly because you know what? If you don't act quickly, sometimes you'll talk yourself out of it. So we ended up finding a place to live in Las Vegas, and back to work I went the following Monday, and I gave 2 weeks notice. Now I know that's really scary for a lot of people to even think, like, what do you mean you gave 2 weeks notice to a job that you've been doing for quite some time, that was your like source of income, that was your security? Yep, that's what I did, because I recognized right then and there that my self-care was important. I needed to take time for me. I needed to actually take back the only thing I could control at the time, which I believed was my time, because I felt that my time, I was a slave to time, meaning I spent all of my time working. I didn't have a life outside of work because my life revolved around my job. So taking back my time literally, I believe, saved my life and got me onto the path of self development, which then led into self care and the importance of it. And I started learning about all these things about why, the importance of self care, things like learning to say no or not right now. In fact, if something is happening in your life that people want you to like jump and do it, if you can't do it right now, be okay to say, I can't do it right now, but also come up with a solution. That's something I learned. A valuable lesson I learned was, don't always just come to the table with a no, come to the table with a solution. And so, you can say, not right now, but I have time at this time slot on this day. Even asking questions like, how, what is the time frame on this? What is it that, getting all of the details that you can get out of it. I learned that self-care, that's part of self-care, but people don't realize that that's part of self-care, learning to say no or not right now. Asking for help too was something myself I could not even fathom doing, because I don't know about you, but being a perfectionist, or shall I say a reformed perfectionist, I used to think that it was just too hard to actually have to tell someone how to do something when I could just do it and get it done, because that takes up all that time to explain. And so I learned that by asking for help, and then the next stage of that, delegating, freed up my time. But that's a part of self care that we typically don't look at as self care, because a lot of people think the soft self care things like bubble baths, mani pedis, massages, going for walks, that those are self care. And yes, they are. They're part of the self care routine that should be part of your life. But the essentials, like learning to say no, asking for help, delegating your time, delegating your processes or things that you have to get done. Um, Also, having a hard stop to the end of the day, setting yourself up for a good night's rest, protecting your time by setting personal boundaries around your time. Having me time is so important. These are essential. And a lot of the time, people just don't realize that, because they look at self care as this thing where it's doing the soft self care things and not looking at the essentials. So, this is how and why, for me, self care has become so important, because I recognize that in order for me to have a good day, in order for me to be able to show up as the best version of myself every day, that it's me first, putting myself first, which is not selfish, because when you take care of yourself the very best you can, everything in your life and everyone in your life gets the best of you as well. So it's learning to be able to do those things for you first, and then being able to have that frame of mind, that mindset, that more there's more joy. You're more intentional around the things that you do. You have more energy. You're more focused. You stay sharp. You learn to take mental breaks daily to take care of you, and learn not to push through so that you don't miss the signs of burnout. And then you allow yourself to be able to do your life, whether you're an entrepreneur, whether you work as an employee, then you can do that better than as if you are not taking care of yourself. One of the things that I've talked to with women of late is that they've said multiple times, "Oh, I can multitask." That's number one, they say, and I'm able to push through when I have deadlines. But then they recognized over time when they do that, they found that they actually did suffer from something which they couldn't quite put their finger on it, but they recognized that all of a sudden everything felt like it was too much, and that was because they were ignoring the signs that their bodies and their minds were telling them that it's time for you to take a break. Those breaks are essential. Like, they should be non-negotiable. If anything out of what I've said today to you resonates with you or hits lands home, it's this one thing: is taking mental breaks so that you don't end up being one of those 32% of women who are entrepreneurial, who end up on a consistent basis suffer from burnout. This is a statistic. So if you don't want to be one of those women who statistically show up that way, and I'm sure the number is higher, because as women we're like we're getting out there and we're doing more and we're building new and exciting lives, that there's going to come that time when we actually end up being that person who pushes through. So I'm only telling you this because I think it's so important that you need to learn to put yourself first, because like I said, take care of you the very best that you can, and then everyone else in your life gets the best of you at all times, right? So self-care is important. If you, especially if you're juggling multiple roles and responsibilities and you need that time for you, find something that you can do daily, even if it's only one thing. Taking care of you well is important. Even if you stretch out your self-care across the week or across your day, doing meditation, maybe journaling in the morning, and then in the afternoon you go for a walk, and then in the evening you have a hard stop and you start to wind down and you set yourself up for a good night's rest. That's all self-care related, and that's you taking care of you. So I wanted to share that with you because that's why it was so important for me to make self-care my number one priority, and it's how I work with my clients, helping them to do the same so that they stay sharp, so that they are focused and wake up with more energy and tension to tackle their daily activities with confidence. So I hope that you guys that this landed. And if if you have any questions about self-care and you want to know more, definitely reach out to me. I'm an open book. I love to talk about self-care. So if you've got any questions, send me a message and let's start a conversation. And also, I'll put in the link below. I have a free self-care guide just for you to get you thinking about what self-care really is all about, and how you can either strengthen yours or maybe start looking at ways to maybe tweak what you have, or maybe to start because maybe you don't have one. So I hope that you guys have a great rest of your day. Again, I want to just give you my story of why self-care is my number one priority for me when I start my day. I hope you have a great rest of your day, a great weekend. Make sure that you take care of you, have some fun with your family and your friends, and I'll see you again next week. Bye for now.